I left off talking about when I had landed in London and had gotten into the general city of London, and I still hadn't been arrested yet, which really surprised me because I just assumed that I was going to be arrested in Israel. Then I assumed that I was going to be arrested on the flight going from Israel to London. That was like a 6-hour flight. And then I assumed that I would be arrested, getting off the plane, and now here I am in the middle of London, and now the police certainly don't know where I am. So I don't know what to do. I just turned 18. I don't have the world experience to sort of know what to do. I don't really have a lot of money. I was on the pro tour, so I have some of my clothes for tennis. I'm sort of on my own. I don't have any family over there in England. So, of course, I immediately call my Aunt Marta. She's my godmother, and I say, what's going on. I also call my cousin Henry, and they tell me that, they fill in the details about Lyle being arrested and say that it's all over the news, and that, of course, they're looking for me, and all the news says is, I'm not sure if the news said I was out of the country or not, but my aunt puts me on the phone with the family attorney, Gerald Chaliff, and Jerry basically fills me in on the details and says that he has an attorney and that he thinks that I should hire, named Leslie Abramson. And just to show you how warped my thinking was back then and how brainwashed I was, because my family was a very male-dominated family, and sort of a Latin mentality of the men run the world. When he mentioned Leslie as this female attorney, I said, Jerry, aren't I like in a lot of trouble right here? Isn't this a very serious case? And he said, yeah. And I said, then you really think that I should hire Leslie, this female attorney? It just was in my brain that, well, of course I need a male attorney. And that's just an example of how sort of screwed up my perception of life was back then. I said, Jerry, well, what do I do? Do I come back? Do I turn myself in? What do I do? It really wasn't a thought of running. Lyle had been arrested, and at that point, Lyle was my whole world. He was like a father figure to me at that point. He was far more than an older brother. He was my idol. So I wanted to get to where Lyle was, and it would have been easy to take a detour and go to Cuba. Half of my family lives in Cuba still, so I would have been accepted there, most likely. I had alternatives, but it wasn't a part of my thinking. It wasn't a part of my consciousness. I wanted to get back to the United States, and I wanted to be with Lyle, even if that meant being in jail. So I said, what do I do? Now, Jerry said to come back to the United States. Really, that was a very, very bad decision. Jerry screwed up big time, and he was a prominent attorney, and in retrospect, should have known better. And when ultimately Leslie became my attorney, she was not happy with Jerry for that decision. And the reason is because they were seeking the death penalty in the United States. And in London, in England, they don't have the death penalty. And they will not extradite anyone to the United States if they're facing the death penalty. It's not that ultimately I wouldn't have come back to the United States, but the circumstances of my trial would have been different because the prosecutor would have had to not seek certain special circumstances. And so the potential sentence, which I have right now, which is life without the possibility of parole, may not have been in play. We would have had to make an arrangement and say, okay, I'll come back to the United States, but you can't seek the death penalty or life without. I can still face life in prison. It would have been different. But for whatever reason, Jerry wasn't thinking clearly, I guess. So he just said, yeah, come back, even though you're facing them putting you to death. So that's what I did. But there was a freeze in Interpol at this point with my passport, so I couldn't travel into the United States. It was strange. I couldn't travel into the United States, but I could travel anywhere else in the world. I think what they meant to do is prevent me from traveling out of the United States, but I was already out of the United States. So an arrangement had to be made with the detectives to the police to drop that bar of me entering or exiting the United States. And it was agreed that I would fly from London to Miami. And so that's what I did. I flew into Miami, and I met my Aunt Marta and my cousin Andy and a Miami detective, and I went through customs, and then I waited. I wasn't handcuffed, none of that. I was just kept in a room, and I talked to my Aunt Marta and my cousin Andy, and I cried with them, and we stayed there for a couple hours talking about, the fact that I was going to go to jail for a very long time, and face trial. So we waited there until the flight came, and so I was put on a flight with my cousin Andy. So it was my cousin Andy and me. We took a direct flight from Miami to Los Angeles, and there was no detective came with us. I wasn't handcuffed or anything. So I spent a couple hours with Andy on that flight from Miami to Los Angeles, and I knew I would be arrested as soon as I landed in Los Angeles. And so that was really a heartfelt time that I got to spend with my cousin, who ultimately died a few years later. And so it was sort of a cherished time I got to spend talking to him alone in the last few hours that I ever saw freedom.